Hey again, and welcome back. In our previous video, we talked about what resonances are and how they can affect your mix. We looked at how narrow frequency ranges can start to dominate what we hear, cause masking, and make it harder to balance a mix or push things louder. So now the question is, what do we actually do about resonances? The first step is learning to recognize what kind of problem you're dealing with. Let's listen to this example mix from the previous video and walk through a systematic approach to addressing frequency issues. This is a basic rock mix with drums, bass, and hard-panned electric guitars. As you listen to this mix, try not to focus on any single instrument. Instead, notice if anything feels like it's pulling your ear in a specific direction. To my ears, the mix feels congested with the guitars present. To confirm that, I'll pull their fader down briefly. With the guitars lowered, the mix opens up. When I bring them back in, there's a sense of pressure in the upper mix. That tells us the guitars are contributing something that's overpowering the mix. Next, I'll bring the guitars up to a level that feels balanced overall. Right about there. The guitar's upper mids fill the mix, but I'm still missing some brightness and low end. Now instead of boosting those areas, I'll try to address what's already standing out. Since the guitar sound is very consistent, a static EQ cut can work well here. I'll apply a fairly wide cut at around 2.4K and compensate for the level change. Notice what happens. Without boosting anything explicitly, we hear more low end, more low mids, and more high frequencies. Taming a dominant area often reveals what was already there. I want to stress that when making EQing decisions like this, it's essential to stay within the context of the full mix. If we were to solo the guitars now, it would be very easy to start second-guessing this move. In isolation, almost any sound will reveal something that feels exaggerated or unpleasant. We might start grabbing a bunch of different resonances that might ultimately be masked by other elements in the mix anyway. That's not good, and it leads to death by 1,000 cuts. In addition to messing with the character, when you cut too much around the offending resonance, you can actually reintroduce the offending resonance back, only by account of it getting louder again in relation to the surrounding area. By listening in the context of a mix, we can focus on what actually matters, whether the overall balance improves and whether the mix becomes easier to listen to. In this case, the EQ move addresses a general upper mid buildup that was affecting the whole mix, not just the guitar tone. This also highlights a useful guideline. The frequency range that stands out first when pulling the fader up is usually where resonances or buildups live. Identifying that range in context is far more reliable than hunting for problems in solo. For static buildups like this, gentle and wide EQ moves are often enough. Still, let's compare workflows and see how a resonance suppressor would work on the same material. Since we're here at OX Sound, I'll go ahead and use Soothe, but this workflow can apply to your favorite tool as well. I'll bypass the EQ and bring in Soothe instead. Right away, we can see activity around the same upper mid area. The reductions are very stable over time, which confirms that the issue is largely static. We see two main cuts, one at 2.5K, which we picked up before on our EQ, and another one at 4.5K. In this case, my ears are more bothered by the resonance at 2.5K, so I'll boost it a bit with this band, and pull down the high cut filter to lessen Soothe's effects on the resonance around 4K. I'm not looking to control any low mids in this case, since I like how the guitars are sitting there. I'll pull up the low cuts to make Soothe let go of that area. Next, I'll adjust detail. For most issues, lower values tend to work well. I'm looking to reduce excess energy across a broader area that's affecting the tonal balance. What I don't want is to delete all narrow resonances, as that's the character that allows these guitars to cut through the mix. Settings in the lower range give a result that's comparable to our EQ move, while still allowing Soothe to react dynamically. Still, let's try maxing out the detail. Notice how the action slows down to keep these deep cuts sounding natural. This setting is definitely useful for those peaky and unstable resonances, but isn't quite appropriate for our use now. The delta function can help while setting up Soothe. By briefly increasing the depth, we can hear what Soothe is removing and make sure it aligns with what we find distracting. Finally, I'll set the depth so that the upper mids feel controlled without losing presence. I'll check this against bypass and compensate for the reduced energy by boosting the wet trim. At this point, the guitars sit more comfortably and the mix has more room to breathe. Okay, that was a lot of information condensed into just one example. However, what matters here is the decision process, not the specific settings. Here are the 3 key points to consider when using your favorite resonance suppressor. Firstly, if something feels sharp or irritating, especially in the mid-range, it's probably a resonance. If it just feels like the mix is thick or unclear, you're probably dealing with a build-up instead. Soothe and other resonance suppressors can help with both, provided that you have some way to adjust the detail or sharpness of the cuts you're making. Using as wide cuts as you can get away with always provides more natural results, especially when we're looking to reduce excess energy in the mix rather than change the fundamental character of our sounds. Second, once you've identified the problem range, whichever processor you're using, use its filters to limit the processing to where it's actually needed. Like I said before, resonance suppression is effective when it's targeted. Taking away the same amount across all the frequencies doesn't really solve anything in the balance, but it messes with the character of your sounds. Limiting your frequencies is the second key to natural results. Also, make sure to cut only as much as needed. If you push it too far, the sound also starts to lose focus and character. That's usually a sign that the frequencies were contributing something useful and were actually needed. Finally, remember to consider the attack and release values. If your resonance suppressor is set too fast, it can bite into your transients, making them sound muddy. True clarity comes from defined transients, and resonances usually take time to build up. Because of this, I would try and set the attack as low as you can get away with. Also, if your plugin allows you to adjust timing frequencies specifically, you could try a slower attack for the lower frequencies only, letting more of the punch through, while controlling harsh high frequencies with a faster attack. Treating resonances is about managing the listener's attention. Some frequencies are essential to a sound's identity, while others can take over and obscure important details. By controlling resonances dynamically and in context, you make your mixes easier to balance and easier to listen to, without stripping away what makes them work. This approach applies to any source and any style. Listen first, identify what's actually getting in the way, and adjust only enough to let the rest of the mix speak. Take care now, and see you in the next one.